Lorraine Woodford pleaded with her brother-in-law on the phone. "David, I need you and Shelley to pray. Jim didn't come home last night, and I feel something is horribly wrong." David replied with confirmation of the seriousness of her concern. Shelley woke up in the middle of the night several times with an urge to pray. Now we know why. Another of Lorraine's sisters later reported that she too had been awakened with an urgent sense to pray. Lorraine and her sisters believed in Jesus, but her husband Jim had stubbornly ignored God for years. He had no interest in God even after contracting Guillain-Barré syndrome, a severe autoimmune disease that attacked his nervous system, causing excruciating pain. The disease also permanently grounded him from his lifelong passion of flying. Jim Woodford had flown 42 different types of aircraft, including a 737, which he piloted around the globe. Flying was his love. Having logged thousands of hours as a commercial airline pilot, though he grew up in a Catholic family in Newfoundland, he never prayed. Jim admits, "My one goal in life was to have things. I had a yacht, an airplane, and 19 British sports cars that I kept in the garage on my horse farm. I enjoyed things, but never once did I even have an urge to talk to God. My sole goal was the accumulation of wealth, and I was good at it. But as the intensity of the pain from his disease increased, so did the need for relief." Jim drove out to his horse farm that night to check on a broken fence. He sat in his truck watching the sunset. He popped the last 2 pills in the bottle. He had lost count of how many opioids he'd taken that day. Too many, as it turned out. Jim's head hit the steering wheel as he died. Medical records later documented 11 hours with no sign of brain activity. I'd never asked God for anything, but as I saw the setting sun with my hands shaking violently from somewhere deep inside, was this feeling: acknowledge God. Thank Him for the life you thought was your own doing, and ask forgiveness. I said, "Jesus, forgive me," and with that, I collapsed. I woke up, sat back up, and immediately I felt incredibly well. I got out of the truck, walked about 15 feet away, and it was if I'd taken off a heavy, wet overcoat, and all the pain with it. I looked down, and I could see through my feet to the ground, but I dismissed that as the effects of the drug. But I felt like I was 20 years old again, and I thought, I got it right. You have to take the whole bottle. I looked back at the truck, and I felt outraged. Someone was sitting in my truck, sleeping on the steering wheel. When I looked at the body in the truck, that moment, seeing the blood gushing out of the mouth, I realized that body on the steering wheel is mine. Suddenly, I began to rise. Meanwhile, that next morning, Lorraine, her 3 sisters, her brother-in-law, and her nephew gathered in her kitchen. 2 officers of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police collected information on where they might search for Jim. Afterward, the 6 family members joined hands and prayed, never imagining that Jim could actually see their prayers. After traveling swiftly through a tunnel of light, Jim landed gently on a beautifully manicured grass. To his right, he saw a heavenly atmosphere. To his left, he saw what he described as an eternity without God, and before him appeared to be a final choice. I knew the tunnel behind me was closing, and I had to step out of the tunnel. I stepped and felt something solid. The tunnel closed. I could see grass. the most beautiful grass imaginable. Each blade lit up as I walked on it. I looked out on the most beautiful scene ever. I've seen Hawaii, the savannah, Arizona. Nothing compares. As a pilot, I tried to find the sun to get my bearings, but there was no sun. I had never read the Bible, so I didn't know it says there is no sun in heaven. But the rolling hills and mountains were covered with flowers, with colors beyond description. I'm breathless by the beauty, but as I looked toward the left, the beauty went from green to brown to scorched to an ugly black rock dropping off into a deep crevasse, probably 300 yards away. It was like a visual dichotomy. I was confused by the difference between the beauty to the right and the emptiness to the left. So I made my way over toward the crevasse out of curiosity. I got to the edge and looked down, and what I saw was like a distant campfire in a deep, dark valley at night. I'm both in terror and fascinated as I notice this thing, this creature that is 50 feet high, obese, sniffing around in the bottom of this pit, and its body was on fire. The creature turned and looked up over its squat neck, and I looked into the eyes of this creature. Words fail me to describe the sheer hatred for me I felt in its eyes. It looked like the face of a hyena on a body on fire. It snarled and it breezed up the canyon walls coming for me. I could smell the stench of death. The worst part is that you feel the pain of all the hurt you caused. I experienced that pain. I was ruthless in business. I gave young women false ideas. I was poster boy for success, but I had no regard for anyone's feelings. This creature was calling my name. To hear this demon call my name was the ultimate wake-up call. I know this sounds like a cheap Hollywood movie, but that's what Satan wants us to think. When the demon spoke to me, it said, Jim, we are here for you. This is your time. You belong here. Come, Jim, join us. We are here for you. I turned around and dropped to my knees. I could feel its breath on the back of my neck. I had cried out, God, forgive me, in the truck. But when I felt its talon clawing down my back, I begged, God, help me, help me. And I expected nothing. I had ignored God all my life. I deserved nothing. As soon as Jim cried out for God's help, he saw 3 points of light appear in the distance, rapidly approaching. The 3 lights converged, strafing Jim's head like 3 fighter jets doing a flyby. He turned his head just in time to see the convergence of the 3 lights strike the hideous creature, which shrieked and darted back down the crevasse. I turn and I'm looking at 3 of the most magnificent creatures anyone could imagine. The first was 10 feet tall. I found out he had been assigned to me from conception. Another was 13 feet tall, and another 15 feet tall. I say he, but to me, they were a combination of the strength of a man with the gentleness and wisdom of the feminine. Imagine this being of light with flowing robes that shimmered as they walked. They came right up to me, smiling at me. They had very light silver hair and 2 spires of light, which were the shoulders of the wings folded in. The spires came up from their shoulder blades, and they caused a golden refraction that we see as a halo. Their eyes were the most incredible violet color. Their eyes never blinked. but their look was a look of absolute love and protection for me. I looked up into one of the angel's violet eyes, and I realized he was about to speak, but his lips didn't move. I felt the words, "Fear not, James, for we are your constant friends." Then he smiled. I found out later the 10-foot one had been my guardian. He told me I was the 2031st soul he had protected. The 13-foot angel looked really studious with some sort of paper and quill, and I later found out he was a scribe. The 15-foot one was a warrior angel, unmistakable, wearing armor. The tall warrior angel, with a voice much deeper than the other two, said, "James, would you walk with us?" And as he turned, a gravel path through a field of flowers opened up, and we began to walk. As I walked, it was like I had omnivision, 360 degrees. I could look off at the mountains of heaven and see the petals of a flower on the mountains, while also seeing other things simultaneously. At the same time, I was asking the angels questions with my thoughts, and as I'm thinking the questions, I'm feeling their answers. I'm looking around me and seeing paradise, just like Earth, but 10,000 times more beautiful. "The flowers are so beautiful," I said, and I stopped. The guardian motioned toward the flowers, and I kneeled to look closer. As my knee hit the ground, light ripped out from my knee. I heard something coming from the flowers, like a tinkle of small bells. But then, to my amazement, I saw a melody wafting up from the flowers. In heaven, color has sound, and sound has color. "Is that music?" I asked. A big grin came across the guardian as he said, "James, the flowers of heaven are so happy you are here. They are singing to you." I was in awe. I looked up in the sky, and it was a cerulean blue. It was a sunless sky, deep, deep blue, and I spotted something like streaks of brilliant light going straight up. To me, as a pilot, they looked like the white contrails of ice left behind by jets. I thought, are those contrails? I was stunned seeing 6 contrails across the sky. I asked the guardian, "What are those?" And he said, "James, those are the prayers of your family for your soul, as we speak." When I got back, I found out my family all came to the house, and 6 of them prayed, "If it be the will of Jesus, please send Jim back." And I was in heaven seeing those prayers. I said, "The prayers for me?" And the guardian angel went on to say, "Sadly, mankind is losing the will to pray. Your grandparents would make time to pray after the day was over. But sadly, again, mankind has become a culture of instantaneous gratification. With your devices, you watch something instantly. People go to church, pray to God on Sunday, and if it doesn't happen by Tuesday, they say, God doesn't care. Every prayer that has ever been uttered by anyone ever conceived, every prayer is recorded in heaven, Jim. Your prayers are recorded to show you during your life review all the things that you prayed for that didn't happen. God will one day show you when a prayer was not answered. It was because God knew it would not be good for you. And yet you can power through with your own free will to try and make it happen. The guardian explained to me that God has absolute respect for our free will because love can never be taken. It can only be given. He will not violate our free will because free will is necessary for love. The guardian said, "James, touch my robe." I did, and instantly we were in the sky, and I wondered if this was for me because I was a pilot. I was looking down on this golden city, and instantaneously I knew I was looking down on God's celestial home. I saw immaculately laid out concentric circles of golden streets with green belts between them, and they intersected to form crosses, streets of gold, but not like we think of gold. There was a translucent gold that you could see into almost like glass, but with a golden tint. Everything flowed to a brilliant light that appeared to be the throne of God. As the golden streets grew nearer to the throne, their color became more transparent as some kind of crystal. The buildings I saw were in the Greek-Roman style, but not hewn from stone, hewn from blocks of light. I could see these buildings in all their glory. The buildings were magnificent in scope and size, but there was a warmth to them. It felt like I had come home. I'm looking down on this populace of people, all tribes and nationalities. They're beings of light, but they have the features of men and women and children. They acted like normal people. You could see families who had just been reunited in the holy city, and they were walking around describing things to the newcomer. It was so relatable and stunning. Am I seeing this correctly? I asked the guardian, because it seems everybody appears to be in their early 30s or younger. He said, "Yes, James, you're correct. No one in heaven is older than Jesus when he died." It was explained to me that people can show themselves to their loved ones as they last remembered them. If you want to remember your child younger, that's how they'll appear. I started to point to buildings. The guardian described the halls of learning and the halls of music. We came upon a beautiful building made of the same shimmering material as the others. I asked the angel, "What is this magnificent building?" He replied, "James, this is the hall of knowledge. It is a repository of all prayers and petitions that mankind sends to heaven and the throne of God." I was reassured again that nothing is ever lost to God. So the knowledge spoken of is God's knowledge of the heart of man and his deepest longings, which are cataloged there. Along with prayers, there were accounts of the deeds of people, both good and evil. Again, nothing is lost to God. The halls of knowledge are where the books of each of our lives are kept. Jim miraculously revived and went from agnostic to fervent follower of Jesus. Jim saw the power of our prayers firsthand, and if we're going to do life with God, the first thing we must understand is how prayer works and why it's so important to God.